I'm John Buchanan. Now what we're going to do this week is to put a particular kind of composing technique for strings under the microscope a little bit, because actually a lot of people struggle with the thing that we're going to identify, and tantalizingly, I'm not going to tell you what it is until we've listened to these short strings. Let's have a listen to this little sort of 4-bar arrangement that I've built for first and second violins, violas and cello. Let's just have a listen. So what we've got is this kind of strident string arrangement, and the reason that I've written this piece and the fact that it's at this nice lively tempo is because I want this kind of really nice, diggy, strident, I've used that word twice now, kind of sound where we get all of the momentum of this kind of string arrangement in flow. And yet, actually it sort of sounds a bit ill-defined. What we've got is a collection of sounds that almost feel like they're just trying to sort of fight out of the space in which they were recorded. We can imagine the kind of feel of them being full of life and energy, but actually they're not quite doing that thing. Now what I want to do within this particular week's episode is to highlight a couple of things. If you are writing for string libraries and you want that kind of definition, you're not quite feeling it, we're going to look at a couple of separate things. One of which is going to be EQ. We're going to come to that in a little while, but what we're going to start with is the concept of microphone positions. What I'm going to do is to open up Contact. All of these string sounds are coming from the Spitfire Symphony Orchestra. So this is a Spitfire audio library. And what I've got down here at the bottom of the interface for every single instrument, I'm using the spiccato articulation. Down here at the bottom is I've got a series of microphone options referred to as signals and mixing. So what have I actually got here? Well, when it comes to recording string samples, what the leading orchestral library providers will do is to put microphones in a whole bunch of different positions. And by the way, this is also true if you ever go and watch a live concert of an orchestra that's being broadcast for television, for instance. For those of you in the UK, I'm particularly thinking about the proms. The way that the BBC will mic up the orchestra is that they'll start with an array of microphones directly above the conductor position, which we refer to as a Decca tree. This is a particular recording sort of technique which was pioneered by Decca for their recordings, hence they get their name in the title. And the Decca tree microphone is the default position which is available to us when we open up this library, and indeed other orchestral libraries as well. But again, going back to the idea of live recording, if what we also want, as well as the whole of the soundstage from above the conducting position, is a microphone on every individual player, what we also have is a close microphone which is available to us here. And what's available within this a particular sample instrument, not just for the first violins, but for all of the instruments that I've looked at, is that we've actually got 5 separate microphone positions. So we've got a close mic, which is literally a microphone next to each individual player. Then what we've got is the Decca tree. We've got an ambient microphone, which is microphones further back into the audience position. So in other words, a kind of comfortable listening position if you're an audience member, what we're kind of used to if we bought a ticket and gone to hear an orchestra. Then we've got the outriggers, which are right at the back of the hall and picking up the most reverberant space. And then lastly, what we've got is a lead microphone, and that is a microphone above the section leader for the first violin section. So if you went to see a string orchestra and you were looking at the first violins, the leader would be the person nearest the conductor and nearest the outside, the person sitting at the front closest to the audience. And behind them, stretching into the distance, would be the rest of the first violin section. So that microphone is above the leader position, not very far, in fact, from where the Decca tree is. Okay, so how does all of this help with definition? Well, we'll hear that pretty clearly. Just to remind you what the first violins sound like straight out of the box using the Decca tree, well, they sound like this. with all of that reverb at the end, natural reverb from the hall in which they were recorded. Let's compare that with the close mic. And suddenly we get loads more definition. However, what we also get is this much more kind of naked sound. It feels far more exposed. And to really make the point, I'm going to go back to the Decca tree and I'm going to play you the whole arrangement. And then as quickly as I can, I'm going to swap all of the tree mics out for only the close mics across the whole orchestra. Here is the same piece again with only the tree mics used across all 4 instruments. And let's swap them. So this is the first violins, just becoming close only. Then what we'll do is move to violin 2. And the violas. And the cello. That sounds like this. Now what we hear there, not only does it sound sort of more intimate because everything is only using microphones much closer to each individual section, so therefore there's less reverb, we also hear more kind of stereo separation in each group of instruments. First violin's over on the left-hand side, cello's on the right-hand side, second violin's here, violas here. And if I was just to solo the cellos and the first violins, we'd hear that really clearly. The violins are going to be on the left and the cello are going to be on the right. So I don't love that sound, but it is more defined. So of course it feels like potentially there's a balance to strike between the warm loveliness of the tree mic and the addition of the close mic to provide us with some of that extra definition. Let's come back to the first violins for a second. We're just going to stick with these 2 instruments for now. I'm going to re-engage the tree microphone. I can use more than one microphone at a time. And what I'm going to do is just slightly drop the level of it. So I'm actually going quite big with the close mic and a little bit less big with the tree, but we are reinstating it. And what I'm going to do is exactly the same thing with the cellos as well. What does that sound like? So that feels like quite a nice compromise. What we've got is the warmth and the magic of the tree, feels like a sound we're used to, but we've now got this extra definition which is coming from the close mics. What I'm actually keen to do now is just to reverse those 2 microphone positions. So I think I'm currently looking at the cello, I am. So what I'm going to do is to make the tree the loudest mic and to back off the amount of the slightly scratchy close mic but still leave it in the mix. I'm going to do the same thing with the first violins as well. Let's just see what this sounds like. This is going to be a subtle difference. Okay, I think I prefer the opposite. What I'm going to do is to come back to the positions that we had a moment ago. I'm going to make sure that we've got that happening in both the first violins and in the cellos as well, and I'm going to replicate it across the second violins and the violas as well. Now the other thing to say, let me just change those and talk to you at the same time. I think they call that multitasking. They do. Okay, so not only are we sort of losing definition because of the microphone positions we've sort of looked at and addressed, but it also feels like the sound is a little bit kind of lumpy from a frequency perspective. And when I solo the first violins and the cellos only, it feels like I'm getting more definition from the violins than I am from the cellos, partly because low frequency content lasts for longer, has more energy, feels a bit more bloated, and doesn't have the kind of nimble definition that I'm hearing from the strings, even though every note has been programmed to the same length. And of course, the spiccato technique is a kind of, well, in old school sampling terms, it's a one-shot technique. It doesn't matter how long I hold each note down. It's only going to last the length of time that it does, and the same thing's true for the cellos. And yet, there's less definition here, it feels like, because it's got more low frequency content in it, and therefore that kind of energy sticks around for a little bit longer. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these sounds into a track stack. What I want to do is to EQ them, but I want to EQ them together to see if I can bring more definition to the overall string arrangement. So this track stack I'm going to call strings. Why? For that is what they are. Let's put our loop back in place. Now what I'm going to do is to come and find the Pro Q4, the FabFilter Pro Q4, which is going to let us see the frequency content very clearly. But what it's also going to let us do is to work in linear phase EQ mode. This basically means that as we begin to EQ this sound, we're not going to introduce phasing issues as a result of the fact that the microphone signals from all four instruments are kind of being massed together into one EQ. So I was talking a moment ago about the kind of woomph, I'm going to call it that, of the low frequency content in the cellos. It's this kind of low energy sort of sucking frequency content. It's an essential part of the cello signal, but do we need as much of it as we're getting out of the cellos right now? I'm going to not solo the cellos, we're going to listen to the whole string mix, but it's the low frequency content I'm interested in. So when I create a band and I hover over it, if I press this little headphones button, we get to solo that band and hear it by itself. And that's useful and instructive, but not a great way to make all of our decisions about EQ. We don't want to just be soloing a particular band and saying, yes, this band is a problem, and making a dramatic change to it. I'm knocking out 2.5 decibels, a little bit over that, from this frequency band, just to lessen the effect of the way that that sound feels. Now, another thing I can do if I want to is to make this band dynamic, and that almost introduces a kind of compression quality to this band. It means that as any frequencies within the band that I've identified get louder, the EQ will work harder. So I've got an overall volume drop of a couple of dB, 2.5 decibels or so. Let's make it exactly that, or as close to it as we can. There we are. But there's the potential for an additional volume drop as signals get louder. So if frequencies within this particular area build up in volume, this EQ node will work harder to turn their volume down, effectively producing a kind of compression effect. Now, what we could also do would be to go looking into the kind of mid-range as well to see whether or not frequencies in this area are also kind of bloating the kind of really defined sound that we want that's coming from the kind of high frequency content. Now then, do you want to hear how much difference that's made? Of course you do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let 4 bars run, and the second time I'll take it out. Remember, nothing is being EQ'd more than 3 or so decibels. I think, however, there's going to be a lot more definition in it second time round. We'll start with it bypassed, I'll punch it in. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? That suddenly the moment we kind of get rid of this lumpiness, with all due respect to the cello players, I'm only talking about from a frequency point of view, it's nothing to do with their beautiful playing, what we get is this much more strident sound. Now, why have I done this? Well, because I've written a really fast passage for multiple string players, and what I want is a super strident defined sound. There are loads of circumstances under which I might write for spiccato where I don't want such definition. But if you're working with strings and you're comparing your string writing to other things that you're hearing in soundtracks and wondering why you don't feel like you're quite getting the response that you want things to sound a little bit more urgent, we've looked at 2 really important things. Firstly, experiment with the microphone positions available to you for every instrument you have. And remember, the close mics are always going to give you a slight scratchiness, but a closeness, which might help in terms of definition. And what we've done here is to put a kind of group EQ on each individual sound. Now, of course, there's one more thing to say, which is if I wanted to, and if I decided that the cellos were the only problem, I could EQ just the cello part and leave everything else alone. But my feeling is that actually there's lower frequency content coming from the violas a little bit as well. And certainly that's true for some of the kind of engine room style EQ changes I've made in the mid-range. So a few things all to do with string mixing. As always, remember, if you're working with the sampled orchestra and you want to take your techniques further, do go and check out my courses working with sampled orchestral arrangements, which include a lot of mixing techniques, and they're all at learn.johnnybuchananmusic.com. But if you're just working in this kind of way and you want extra definition, now you know where to go and find it.